Welcome to the Moms I Know with Sheila Walsh-Denton and Maria Anderson-Farner. Two moms on a mission to reclaim childhood and take you from surviving to thriving on your parenting journey. The Moms I Know is your go-to source for motivation, inspiration, and resources, and real conversation about motherhood and parenting with intention. Thank you for being a part of our community. We hope you enjoyed this episode.
While we try to teach our children all about life, our children teach us what life is all about. Angela Schwindt. Hi, this is Maria.
And this is Sheila.
And we want to welcome you to The Moms I Know. And today we are recording Family School Part 2.
So in this episode, we're going to go in, delve a little bit deeper into why family school. And this didn't immediately come to us. This was more an organic, this grew organically out of what we've been talking about over 2 seasons of the Moms I Know podcast. And it's just such a natural kind of evolution of the Moms I Know. And so we want to show you why family school.
And we also recorded Family School Part 1 before we were in a global pandemic. And we've been having a lot of conversations about how foundational this work is. Our podcast, our family school ideas, and whether we are in a global pandemic, well, kind of because we are, these are even more important than ever. And so it's really looking at this, all the choices that we make about intentional family living. And going forth from this pandemic, it's going to be even more essential that we really look at these so closely. So we're really excited to be here today to be able to talk to you about these 5 tenets of family schooling.
Okay, so in a nutshell, we're just going to go through them really. I'm going to list them right now, and then Maria and I are going to take a little bit of time to kind of tell you the whys of it. So we start with the guardians of childhood. And then we go to space and time. Then we have courage cultivation, read alouds, and rites of passage celebrations. Do you want to start, Maria, with guardians of childhood?
Okay, so guardians of childhood, and this really came about, and I think we talked about this in our part 1, about, we were talking about how important it is to have developmentally appropriate childhood, let our children be children, and to protect that precious time, especially these first 7-8 years of childhood, is so important for the really forming of everything about who they are. And so we know those first 3 years of life are critical for all of the intellectual formation, and then the language skills and the critical thinking skills and everything. But just the way in which we can try to protect that space, and that doesn't mean to prohibit learning. It means to protect the space so that they can learn in the way that is best for them. And so we really are looking at protecting, nurturing, and strengthening.
It's kind of, in a way, like Marie Kondoing childhood, clearing away the excess so that the creativity can blossom. And as a parent, as when we're intentionally parenting, we are creating an environment where learning is taking place naturally. And so when we think of guardians of childhood, we are there to protect, nurture, and strengthen. And so what we see falling into that is we see, paying attention to nutrition, making sure you're establishing healthy foundations. You are paying attention to the non-toxic living, making sure that your children are not reliant on processed foods and good smelling stuff, because unless it's natural, because we know those are a lot of chemicals that overburden our systems. We want to teach you about herbal remedies, and there's a saying like Dr. Mom, really learning to inspire you, to empower you to learn about how you can heal your children at home. Yes, we have a medical system that is amazing for acute care, but what about, preventative care? That's what being a guardian of childhood is all about as well.
And we're looking at, like I said earlier, that developmentally appropriate childhood. So we are letting children have that time in nature. We're letting them develop with things that are appropriate, and we're really limiting or eliminating the screen time. And so we will be going into each of these in their own separate podcast episode as well as a video episode. So we'll take you much deeper into these. So today is just this kind of overview, but we just feel so strongly about this concept of really protecting this, just like I said, special, incredible time in a human being's life. So that's Guardians of Childhood, and much more to come.
Yeah. And I just want to add right there also in Guardians of Childhood is looking at positive discipline, attachment parenting, looking at parenting styles that put the child first, the conscious parenting piece. Okay. So next we're going to go to space and time.
And with space and time, we're looking at mindfulness, our own sort of meditative practices, nonviolent communication. We're looking at the importance of movement, really healthy movement for, again, we're talking about family school. So we're looking at not just for the children, but for the entire family, the adults, the rhythms, the way in which we are structuring our life, making sure that there's good, healthy boundaries, but also that there's plenty of exploration and that the children are having the indoor and outdoor movement that is really healthy for mind, body, spirit. And then looking at the breath. And so how important breathing is, and the physical breathing, as well as that sort of rhythm of the daily life. And so we go into these a lot more, but it's just, so when we talk about Guardians of Childhood, this time and space is the obvious next piece of that, of just creating the time for our children to be children, creating the space for them to develop really naturally and holistically. And so there's a lot that we'll go into with this again.
Mm-hmm. The next piece is the courage cultivation. I think this is one of my favorites because it was really a cornerstone of our homeschooling experience, family schooling experience. And so when we think about courage cultivation, this is a great place to really bring in storytelling of your family stories, the stories of their grandparents, their great-grandparents, ancestor stories. So you can bring those, and then you could take it a step further and you look at the adventure, the exchange, traveling exchange programs, building resilience, building the grit. You do this through experiential learning, through risky behavior. And risky behavior as a child is different than risky behavior as a teenager. So we're saying risky behavior in childhood is, being able to climb trees, being able to ride your bike, like really kind of, pushing some boundaries, but natural boundaries, so that you're able to feel independent and feel really good inside.
Now, I was going to say that exploring of the boundaries. And so we exploring in nature, exploring with, I love the fact that you brought up storytelling, because through the stories, and whether it's our family or whether it's, sort of these, hero and heroine stories, children can sort of test things out through other people's adventures as well. And so I love that this is such a foundation of your family, and the fact that you and your husband met, outdoor adventure.
Backpacking, yeah.
Yeah, and that this has been such a huge part. And I've really seen the difference with your children and their outdoor adventures, and really cultivating that courage and that, like you said, the grit. It's wonderful. Then we move into classic pastimes. And so classic pastimes, this is one of my favorite areas too. And so it's looking at classic literature. It's looking at the family quality time together. So we're dividing it up into a couple of areas there, and also the board games, the family games, the way in which we spend time together as a family. And so I don't want to say old fashioned, because a lot of times people hear old fashioned and they think, oh, that's, it's old fashioned, right? But when we look to the past for the things that were healthy and wholesome, that's what human beings gravitate to. And what's been happening, I think, in the last couple of decades is there's been a vacuum there, and it has been filled by the media, social media and video games and things like that. And when there's that vacuum, of course the children are going to gravitate to these things that are the shiny bells and whistles. But if we can fill their lives with these really wholesome classic pastimes, then it really builds this foundational character. And so we look at really looking at character cultivation here.
And it's really, as well as like being intentional with your family time. I think that's what we're saying when we're saying, these classic pastimes. It's being at a time when we didn't have the phones. We were not distracted, because what I find sometimes is I find myself on the cell phone, and I say, oh, I'm working, but I'm just, sometimes I'm just going through my social media or something like that. And I see my child over here kind of waiting or wondering what's going on. And it's like, oh my gosh, I need to put that away and spend quality time, whether I'm reading aloud or playing a game of cards. And so, Maria, can you tap into just a second about reading aloud in classic literature?
So the classic literature, there's a reason that it's classic. It's withstood the test of time. And so the themes in classic literature are just, they cut through all of the different cultures and genres and all of that. And so I think that we can draw from these archetypes in the classic literature. And I think that they show people going through these challenges and struggles and coming out the other side. So I think the themes within classic literature are really, really strong. And they're also very wholesome. The vocabulary development, the vocabulary is so much richer in the books that are, 50 years old or older. And not to say that there's not some great literature out there right now, but we're finding that that's really just stronger in the older literature. And then also when we're reading aloud with our families, then, and I always laugh about this, but then our kids know that we know that they know that we've read this all together. And so these themes that we're reading about, it's family knowledge. And so we can refer back to that. And I think there is something that really helps with developing strong values within the family. And so the read aloud is so critical. And then of course the family game time. And I think we've talked about that in other episodes, but we feel so strongly about this quality family time together. And it also helps to, instead of, and I've said this before, instead of like the television being the bad guy, it's like, okay, let's just fill up our time with all of these better things.
Yeah, exactly. It's pivoting and just like not making it the bad guy. But when you have time to do this, we could play cards or we could play a game. I'm noticing that instead of being on the phone, like this gives me so much more joy, so much more fullness than kind of empty on the phone.
And of course, our children love that time with us. I mean, our children want time with us. Believe it or not, they do.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, even my teenagers, they would much, they're like, when's the game night? During all this thing, we've been having a lot of game nights and they look forward to it. One thing I wanted to say, reference we've read Little House on the Prairie several times. And I'll have to say, like during this whole pandemic, talking about the long winter and how hard it was then, it's like there definitely have been some references to some of those books. And as well as we just finished Patty Reed's Doll and how tough it was for the Donner's Party. And we're definitely not there, but some of those lessons learned of what is important. And it's,
right. And when our children hear these stories, they go, oh, I can do that. I can, if other people have done this, then I can do this too. Or this is not so bad. I remember reading Farmer Boy to my son when he was around 8 or 9. And, any complaining about chores promptly went away because, hearing what Almanzo had to do every day before he even had breakfast, it's like, oh, exactly. Okay. So it makes things, kind of relative. And then the children have this reference point.
Mm-hmm. And so that leads us to our 5th tenet, which is rites of passage celebrations. And so that I love how it ends on 5th because that just makes it like, yes, this is the culmination. And it really is, it's marking time with significance, and really, we're coming towards the end of a school year here. So graduation is a rite of passage. And it's really, we're, in a situation right now of how are we going to mark it when we are being told we cannot congregate in groups of more than 10 and so it's but I still think it's so important. So I don't know what our individual family is going to be doing or how the school is going to be handling it, but it will be marked because this is a very important time to honor the work that's been put into this, and as well as celebration where my son is turning 18 this weekend. How are we going to make that special when we're not able, same thing, to congregate? So with the challenges that are upon us right now, it will, I think we'll have to find a way to be more creative and hopefully more memorable to really celebrate what's going on.
One of the things that I'm also seeing, in the midst of this global pandemic is, people have been celebrating and have been getting very creative. I've seen some beautiful ways in which people are honoring the special things that are happening, whether it's birthdays or weddings or different rites of passage, and yet we're also aware of what we're losing right now and what has been lost. And so I think that there's this huge piece of looking to the future and how we are going to celebrate in the future, and how important these family gatherings are, how important the friends are. I read this beautiful thing recently about, just what it's going to be like to be able to hug again, to see our friends and to give them a hug. And I think we're all going to be so much more conscious. As somebody said, the celebration that we'll have in the grocery store, greeting each other as we are able to, to shop with leisure instead of this quick get in, get out. And so I think it's so important for us to look at how we mark the passage of time in this challenging time, but also for all of our lives going forward, and making sure we're honoring, the seasons with children is wonderful. So it's looking at the celebrations of the seasons, looking at the celebrations within the family. And then there are those passages from little kid to big kid to teenager, young adult to really adult. And so there's lots of ideas that we will have for all of you with these celebrations and with these rites of passage. And just, I remember years ago, I had gone to a bar mitzvah, and I remember thinking that if everybody had something like this around 13, what a different world this would be when we're honoring this person, and when they have to go through this, kind of struggle and then perform. And then there's this family celebration, and everyone is witnessing this. And then this person knows that there are these people around them that love them, that honor them, and that are here for them. I mean, think of a wedding also, when people are holding the couple in reverence and saying, we're going to be here for you. And so all of these celebrations and rites of passage are so important in our human society. And we may celebrate them in different ways through different religions or different cultures, but how pivotal they are for us as human beings.
Yeah, I think of the quinceañera, or especially during the teenage year, those teenage years that really ground the teenager in family love, really. And I think that's what this, wrapping up that piece is, the importance of family school. It's strengthening. The reason why family school is to strengthen that family culture, to strengthen those family bonds, and to really to carry on and to spread that, when you are strong inside, you have a strong family, and then you spread that into your community, and you are doing good work. And that's what, Maria and I are here to just guide you, to show you that it's important to pay attention.
Beautiful. So here we go, and we'll have episodes on each of these tenets. So we're happy to be with you today, and we look forward to lots more to come.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us today for the Moms I Know. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. To get the show notes and resources mentioned in today's episode, visit themomsiknow.com. For information on Maria's programs, visit thefutureoffamily.com. And for information on Sheila's programs, visit purplebeetfamily.com. Don't forget to subscribe and rate us on iTunes, and follow us on Instagram at The Moms I Know Podcast. Until next time, have a joyful family journey.